I pre-ordered the Xperia 10 Mark VI, but to my surprise, right now they are out of stock in both Sony and Amazon, at least in Germany, right after launch. The mid-range phone market is probably the most competitive, and the Xperia 10 Mark VI is the latest Sony phone in the sub $500 bracket. There are so many other options in this price range, from A55 to Nothing Phone 2A and some other phones that are very close to 500 mark, like Pixel 8a and A55 with better specs. So why should anyone get this one? I am more a scientist and an app product manager, and today I will review the Xperia 10 Mark VI. The first reason to buy this phone is probably that is the only compact phone under 500 euros right now. Since Pixel 8a is more expensive this year, the phone has a 21:9 aspect ratio, which is similar to the Xperia 5 Mark V and last year's Xperia 10 Mark V. This year, the Sony flagship phone Xperia 1 Mark VI does not have the aspect ratio anymore. The good thing about this aspect ratio is that it makes it much easier to hold one-handed. On the other hand, typing on it from my experience is a bit more difficult, and I tend to type one-handed on it. The fingerprint scanner is on the side, which is the best thing ever on a smartphone. The display is 60Hz, which is a bit of a miss. I'm pretty sure there are some logistics reasons that Sony is going for this panel instead of 120Hz one. Maybe they have a good deal with a provider. One thing though is that most people outside of the tech community probably don't care about it. Even Pixel 8a comes at 60Hz out of the box, unless you change the setting, or iPhone 15 is also 60Hz. The quality of the panel, in my opinion, is not the best. It is a bit subjective, but I didn't feel, at least while watching YouTube, that it is doing a great job. I found that you should absolutely turn off the video image optimization in the setting. With it turned on, the video looks horrendous. I can only assume it's a bug. The color shift on it is pretty disappointing. To be honest with you, last year's panel was much better. I feel Sony chipped out on the panel this year. The haptics are not as good as a flagship, but it does the job. So let's talk performance. The SoC of this phone is Qualcomm Snapdragon 6 Gen 1, which came out in 2022. The chipset is pretty much the weakest compared to competitors. For example, here you can see it scored less in AnTuTu compared to A35 and Pixel 8a. The storage test is pretty much similar to the A35 and Pixel 8a though. At this price point, often people just want to know whether the phone lags or not, and I should say it does not normally, but there's a but. When I was watching YouTube, the phone is as laggy as it gets. Sometimes the phone just refuses to open the comment section or scroll through content and other similar issues. I am pretty sure it's a bug and has nothing to do with the chipset. In the first couple of days, I thought maybe updates were happening in the background, but I've already been using this for 4 days and still YouTube runs buggy on it. I only observed this issue on YouTube though, so maybe they can solve the issue with software updates. If you have this phone or any Xperia 10 model, write down in the comments if I am the only one facing these issues. I'm gonna give you some insider information here. I'm not product manager for a very famous company that you may have guessed from my t-shirts already. The thing about Xperia phones is that not many developers have them. Actually, no developer have them. And sometimes you run into weird issues in production and development that doesn't happen in any other phone, and that's only because of their aspect ratio of 21:9. I kind of feel like it could be the same issue with YouTube here too, but I cannot confirm it. There's something called the network effect. The more people have the same product, the better product is gonna be, and I feel that's why like Samsung phones maybe is a bit better, cornered out compared to Xperia, because not many people have Xperia, and when developers develop something, they don't really optimize it for the Xperia 21:9 aspect ratio. One of the main reasons you want to buy this phone is the battery life. I'm going to do a dedicated video on it, but with pretty heavy use on a single day, I never used more than 50% battery. For example, in this instance, it was already late afternoon and I used the phone for 1.5 days and I still had 42% battery left with 6 hours of screen on time. That is insane. The battery is 5000 mAh and together with a not very powerful chipset, smaller panel, and vanilla Android, it explains the great battery life. The next reason people would pick this phone over other mid-rangers is the SD card and headphone jack, which is a godsend. They also kept the front-facing stereo speakers, which are the best I've seen on a phone in this price range. In general, Xperia speakers are just the best. The next reason to buy this phone is Sony colors. I watched the GSM Arena review and they talked about how unnatural and saturated the colors in the camera are, which is not my experience at all. This phone produces the most natural colors I've ever seen on a mid-range smartphone. It is a bit overexposed though. It also does take photos in bokeh mode, which basically puts a shallow depth of field to the image, and it doesn't do the best job, and again, it's too overexposed for my taste. The camera can take 4K 30 frames per second, which is great. I often tend to record everything on 4K 60 frames per second. It also has manual zoom, which is a great addition, as you can see in this example. I did try to use the manual zoom to create a transition between this footage. The exposure shifts and jumps are super annoying though, and it's pretty bad. I hope Sony fixes this issue as it is more a software bug rather than a hardware issue. The phone just came out, so I assume it is gonna be fixed. It is nice that there is Full HD 60 frames per second to slow the video down, otherwise how can you capture your phone and slow it down for internet amusement? I find it stupid that I have to insure myself as a content creator, but now I get why. It is a dangerous profession. So this year, Sony removed their telephoto camera, which I fully support this decision. If anything, I love companies to stop putting crappy cameras on mid-range phones and just stick with one or a maximum of 2 lenses. But it doesn't mean you cannot take good-looking pictures by zooming into the subject. Here you can see the 2x and 6x zoom pictures that are taken with the camera. I'm positively surprised by the result. The software of the camera is very similar to the Xperia 1 Mark VI, but some of the nice features are missing. Namely, there is no manual mode, which is really a miss. The other thing that may be too much to ask is the cineton mode on the camera, but there are other creative modes such as Vivid. They kept a few nice features. For example, you can still do manual focus on the camera app, as I said. One perk of getting the Xperia phone is the clean Android experience. There is basically no bloatware. There are only a few Sony apps and you can just decide not to install them in the beginning. You still get the Facebook though, I mean, come on. I think that's the main selling point of the phone. I feel the Xperia 10 Mark VI with its battery life and clean Android is more tailored towards business people. This is a phone that your IT department may consider buying for you. The price is okay, the phone is decent, and it is a reputable brand. Nobody's spying on you, the reception is great and I tested it, and you get 4 years of security patches. As an end consumer, there are not many options for a compact mid-range phone these days, and if that's what you are looking for, the Xperia 10 Mark VI can be a good choice. The downside is that the weak processor compared to competitors such as Pixel 8a and not a great panel and 60Hz display. If you want to know how the Pixel 8a performs, I made a video about it and compared it to Pixel 8, which you can watch next. Thanks for tuning into Tecmo, and I will see you in the next one.